Well, hello again. All of you loyal horror devotees are welcome here, of course. So fix yourself a beverage and relax because it's time for another Nosferatu update, as we are becoming perilously close to that much anticipated release date. Speaking of which, why don't I go right ahead and dispense with the bad news first? Now, the rest of the world gets to venture out into the night and experience this masterpiece from December the 25th. How festive of you, but sadly if you live in the UK like me, or Australia, then you may be upset to discover that we will have to wait until January the 1st. As far as I can tell, this is likely due to marketing strategies in the hopes of generating better box office numbers during those New Year holidays. It is a slight bummer of course, but the way I see it, it's their loss, as clearly they have no idea that without zero hesitation, I would selfishly abandon any family Boxing Day plans at the drop of a hat to go see this film. Tell me I'm not alone. So, with the only negative I've ever been able to unearth during the marketing campaign for cinema's Prince of Darkness, Robert Eggers' fourth and perhaps most disturbing film, all done and dusted, let's descend into the dark and murky depths of Nosferatu, even further by discussing the latest, fascinating information and what the lucky few who saw it a whopping month and a half before release date are saying. Oh, and by the way, interestingly enough and to my surprise, you can find the screenplay for the film very easily online by googling it. Personally, I'd rather go in fresh and experience what Eggers has achieved in the cinema. However, I have been researching much of the feedback from those who have read the script and, as I said, those who have watched it already. So I promise this video has no spoilers other than the basic premise, themes and some minor character studies. So let me summarise why I feel this film may effortlessly take the prize of best horror film in recent years, and why it may also redefine and reinvent the genre in a way that may usher in a new age of vampire films that may very much in vain strive towards a new bar set by Robert Eggers' Nosferatu. First of all, Eggers has this unique ability to create uncompromising period authentic films. And even though Nosferatu was initially supposed to follow The Witch, I'm glad it was postponed. The reason is that The Lighthouse and The Northman have no doubt given him a fine opportunity to hone his filmmaking skills in preparation for this gargantuan production. Unlike most other vampire stories that portray female roles as either the femme fatale or the love-struck damsel in distress, excitingly, Ellen Hutter, played by Lily Rose Depp, will undoubtedly be the heart of the film's eerie beauty and tragedy. It's understood that Ellen will be deeply intertwined with the story's central darkness in a way that may surprise and shock people. The aficionados of these stories and cinema will no doubt revel in the film's power to immerse us in its delightfully gothic yet deathly grip. But I fear for those in attendance on a date night, thinking this to be some star-crossed romance between Ellen and Bill Skarsgård's Creature of the Night. Those cinema-going casuals might have their relationships ruined by the film's unsettling tone and its romantic anti-climax. Clearly, in Eggers' version of Nosferatu, what can be seen in the trailer and deduced from people's feedback of the screenplay, Ellen's connection to Count Orlok, whose presence she has felt since childhood, is beyond question more psychic and existential than previous adaptations. Orlok represents and embraces the occult, Satan and death. I see him as an entity beyond our familiar archetypes of evil, whether it be a demon or the devil himself. He is quite simply the void, hence his desire to consume all that is living in this world. Then there is Ellen with her innate drive towards death and Orlok's dark allure, sort of like a proclivity towards sin and destruction. She possesses a powerful temptation to touch death in much the same way as in analogous terms we sometimes imagine jumping off a ledge or stepping out into traffic. These psychological and evolutionary mechanisms reinforce our sanity and self-defense, keeping us alive. Or is it just me that has those thoughts and I need help? But I suspect there is a similarity here at least. Therefore it seems to be an unescapable attraction, a bond almost, something she must confront and deep down desires to. I can see this as a powerful concept that will be absolutely pivotal to the narrative, especially considering the scene in the trailer where we hear Willem Dafoe's professor say to Ellen, "Only you can redeem us." Thus I can imagine Ellen struggling with her bottled up shame and loneliness from a lifelong pull towards such a demonic force, which will only serve to make her character more than just a victim or passive figure, which is usually the case in similar films and stories. I'm sure most of us love a fresh take and a new twist on a genre or retelling of a famous IP. Therefore, with the positivity surrounding and praising Depp's performance as Ellen Hutter, and the overwhelming assurance that Eggers' adaptation has broken away from the typical Hollywood mould, while staying true to the original's core story, has me very excited. I believe what we'll see play out in Ellen's relationship with Orlok will be a very original and unique interpretation of the haunting exploration of companionship, obsession and power dynamics. And if you are familiar with the story of Nosferatu, then I'm sure you'll respect that the idea of redemption and sacrifice in the face of sin and death is central to this story. So I'm looking forward to seeing how Ellen's performance will affect the audience and how her much anticipated encounter with Count Orlok will play out. The vampire Orlok is driven by a primal and singular desire to claim Ellen. She has distinctly sensed, retracted and sometimes nurtured this spell of his she's been under all her life, and has no doubt made mental and physical attempts to fight off his predatory nature. Still, a large part of Ellen has embraced these intrusive thoughts and allowed herself to walk the line between two worlds. One is life's pleasures and pains, and the other, perhaps more tempting to her, is the call of the void. But to throw in an essential fact that I believe will add dimensions to Depp's performance and the film itself, I'm eager to see how Lily's dance background and her many months of training in a Japanese dance called Buto, meaning Dance of Darkness, will factor into the eerie scenes of the film. This style was actually used in the Berserker transformation in The Northman. Its purpose in Nosferatu is to emphasise Ellen's possession and hysteria, whilst adding layers to the overall expressionistic qualities of the film. Okay, well, judging from the accumulation of reactions and pre-embargo reviews, it sounds like this film will strike fear and unnerve us in a way very much lost in modern cinema. It enormously hints at having a wondrous classical appeal from a bygone era, and I can certainly sense this protruding from the trailer. Suppose Nosferatu does capture our imaginations and severely haunts us in a way that I am hoping for, especially after having read most of the feedback online. In that case, I'm interested in discovering how this modern adaptation will tackle its themes of repressed erotic desires and the pure unadulterated draw to darkness or the great abyss that the trailer just oozes with. After all, you could easily make the case that in the best examples of gothic tellings of vampire stories, death and sexual pleasure go hand in hand in many ways and sometimes become synonymous with the plot. So aside from the fact that I haven't been able to find a single bad word about the film, I'm genuinely confident that these elements will create great tension and suspense within a terrifying atmosphere created by Robert Eggers that I'm hearing is vastly more disturbing than The Witch, his first feature film. That's very nice to hear. Now, if we've established that Ellen is to be a real active force within the plot and the movie's horror elements, then what other highlights have surfaced in recent weeks that are bound to lure us to cinemas this Christmas? Well, a curious comparison people are making is that of The Exorcist. Not the recent shite, of course, but the truly terrifying and iconic seminal film released in 1973. If only to speculate, I imagine this has much to do with the many frightening aspects of possession at play in Nosferatu, and perhaps the absolute dread of such an overwhelming presence in their lives. If the tension and suspense are anywhere close to how palpable it was in The Exorcist, then we're certainly in for a treat. Also, as I understand it, The Exorcist was probably one of those never-forget experiences for anyone who got to see it at cinemas back in the 70s. I certainly remember the first time I watched it, and how I was forever affected afterwards. Fingers crossed we can relive some of that shock and trauma value here. Perhaps the biggest highlight for me will be to see the final product of Count Orlok, which is comprised of an amalgamation of several intriguing factors. How he will be visually presented in his two forms is thankfully being kept hidden from us until release day. However, Empire magazine describes an early version of Orlok introduced to Thomas Hutter, played by Nicholas Hoult. Albeit shrouded in darkness, he is still passable as human in a viscerally grotesque and nightmarish way. His second form is not so much of a transformation as such, but more of a true reveal, an image that he might be less inclined to show off to his newly welcomed house guests, and something that has been the talk of the town in the build-up to this film. Eggers says that his version of Orlok, with its use of heavy prosthetics, would not be as outlandish as Manaus or Herzog's interpretation, but remains disturbingly freakish in a way that undoubtedly unsettles audiences. Also, my hat goes off to Bill Skarsgård even further for the simple fact that he trained with an opera singer in order to lower his voice significantly for the role. His voice is now described as a rumbling, wheezing, upsetting Transylvanian nightmare, booming with arrogance and majesty. I mean, my god, is there anything about Robert Eggers' Nosferatu that doesn't cater for all of our sophisticated horror needs? The imagery being showcased here is beyond any expectations I could ever have imagined. Every scene looks like the most beautifully crafted oil painting that has come to life, and having read about how difficult the crew found achieving the perfect lighting for these scenes, I'm starting to grasp how hard they toiled to attain this kind of perfection. Knowing all this has really placed this film on a pedestal for me, and it is perhaps my most anticipated movie in years. Now it's become much more surreal just knowing that it's only around the corner. But if we turn our attention to some of the feedback, the bite-sized reviews currently on Rotten Tomatoes say it all really and quench any nagging fears I might have previously had. I'll throw them up on screen and read a couple out for you. All of the performances are top-notch, with Bill Skarsgård vanishing into Orlok to the point where you see only an entity. Nicholas Hoult brings a sense of desperate pathos to the Harker Hutter role, but this really is Lily Rose Depp's movie. Her possession scenes need to be seen. Actually, just to add that Eggers asked Nicholas Hoult to channel a young Hugh Grant when bringing his character Thomas Hutter to life. Great advice to be honest, but it still gave me a chuckle. This may hint as to where some of the humour will stem from, perhaps. Lily Rose Depp gives every ounce of her body and soul to this eye-popping performance of tormented possession. While the overall portrayal of Count Orlok is so utterly compelling every moment he's on screen, his presence lingers even when he's not. And Nosferatu goes even harder than any other horror film this year. Holy fuck, a gorgeous grotesquerie of dread-infused terrors and a divine dark delight. I think I'll leave it there for now folks, as this one by all accounts looks to be a game changer, and an extraordinary moment in time to be a film enthusiast. I'll be seeing this masterpiece multiple times and speaking about it on numerous occasions as well, no doubt. Please ensure you find the time to see it at the cinema too, as I'd love to discuss it with you in the comments and sharing all that great stuff. So thanks for watching, and I cannot wait. Take care ladies and gents.